I never thought the moment my marriage collapsed would come with champagne glasses clinking and Detroit's skyline glittering behind me. It was supposed to be a celebration, our 7th wedding anniversary. Daniel had insisted on renting a rooftop venue downtown, $5,000 for the night, an expense he justified as necessary for someone of his position. The space filled with his colleagues, friends, and family, all dressed in their finest, toasting to what appeared from the outside to be a perfect union. My $900 dress, saved for months from my personal account because Daniel insisted our shared expenses covered necessities only, hugged my figure in a way that had once made me feel beautiful. Now it felt like armor, something to keep me upright as I navigated the room, smiling at people who knew my husband better than they knew me. After 7 years, I'd perfected the art of being present yet invisible, the supportive wife, the silent partner. At one point in the evening, a colleague approached Daniel about a new automotive project. My husband, too busy entertaining a group of executives, casually shoved his phone into my hand. "Show him the pictures, babe," he said, not even looking at me as he continued his conversation. The device was warm in my palm, unlocked and open to his photo gallery. I swiped up, searching for the project images he'd mentioned earlier that week. That's when the notification slid across the top of the screen, bold and undeniable. "Can't wait to taste you again tonight. Don't let her wear you out first." The words burned into my vision, the sender's name, Jasmine, displayed clearly beside a heart and winking emoji. My fingers froze, throat constricting, as if all the oxygen had suddenly been vacuumed from the rooftop. Before I could process what I was seeing, another message buzzed in. "Think she'll notice that I picked out your tie? Looks better on my floor." Time fractured around me. The music continued playing, glasses still clinked, laughter still rippled through the crowd. But I stood suspended in a pocket of silence. My chest pounded so violently I thought I might collapse right there, in my carefully selected dress, holding the evidence of my husband's betrayal in my trembling hands. A woman nearby, one of Daniel's coworkers' wives, gasped softly. She had seen the messages too, her eyes widening as they flicked from the phone screen to my face. In that moment, something crystallized within me. Not just pain, though that cut deep enough, but clarity. 7 years of dimming myself, of managing every detail of our lives while he took the credit, of ignoring the warning signs that always flickered at the edge of my awareness. It all suddenly seemed absurd. Daniel remained oblivious, still laughing with his colleagues 15 feet away, his back to me as he gestured expansively, commanding the attention of everyone around him. "Are you serious right now?" My voice cut through the ambient noise, sharper than I intended. Heads turned. Conversations halted mid-sentence. The colleague who had asked about the project took a step back, sensing the sudden shift in atmosphere. Daniel turned, confusion flashing across his face. "What's wrong?" I held the phone high, screen illuminated with the damning texts. "This is what's wrong." My voice didn't shake. It carried across the suddenly quiet rooftop, clear as a bell. The color drained from his face so quickly I thought he might faint. "Morgan, give me the phone." His tone attempted authority but landed on desperation. "No." The single syllable contained 7 years of compliance transformed into steel. "You've been sneaking around with her while smiling in my face, while our daughter sleeps down the hall at home, while I've been sacrificing everything for you. And now you're dumb enough to hand me the evidence in front of everyone." A ripple of murmurs moved through the crowd. Someone whispered his name. Another woman said, "Oh my God," under her breath. Daniel reached for the phone, but I pulled it back, stepping away from him. My hands trembled with fury, but my voice remained steady. "You want to play games? Let's play. Don't let her wear you out first. That's what your golden boy over here has been doing with his side piece." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the city below seemed to have hushed in anticipation. Daniel stammered, "It's not what it looks like." A bitter laugh escaped me. "It's exactly what it looks like. Humiliation is a beast that demands release." In that moment, faced with everyone who had witnessed my husband's manufactured success built on my inherited money, my sacrificed career, my endless emotional labor, I did the one thing I knew would sear itself into their memory. I hurled the champagne flute in my hand, not at him, but at the floor between us. The crystal shattered, the sound exploding like a gunshot. Shards scattered across the polished concrete, sparkling under the city lights. "Congratulations," I said, my voice low but deadly clear. "You've just managed to destroy your marriage and your reputation in one night." I turned on my heel and walked toward the elevator. My legs shook, but I forced each step to be steady, dignified. Behind me, I heard voices rising, Daniel calling my name, pleading, but I didn't stop. In those moments, I wasn't broken. I wasn't begging for answers. I was still. The elevator doors slid shut, cutting off the chaos above. Alone, I finally let my hands tremble. My reflection in the mirrored wall looked like a stranger. Mascara smudged, lips quivering, eyes blazing with a fury I had never seen in myself before. I whispered then, not for anyone else, not for the crowd upstairs or the mistress who thought she'd won, but for me. "This isn't the end. You have no idea what I'm capable of." And I meant it. That night on the rooftop above Detroit, with glass still crunching under guests' shoes and Daniel scrambling to spin a story, I vowed revenge. Not just for the betrayal, but for the years I had given him, for every sacrifice that went unnoticed, for every lie that made me doubt my own sanity. He thought those texts were private. He thought he was untouchable. He thought I would stay quiet. He was wrong. When I arrived at my sister Vanessa's house that night, tears finally flowing freely down my face, she didn't ask questions. She simply opened her door wider, pulled me into her arms, and whispered, "Whatever happened, we'll figure it out together." She led me to her guest room, brought me tea I didn't drink, and sat with me until the shaking in my hands subsided. It was only then, in the quiet of her home, with the sound of her husband's gentle snoring drifting down the hallway, that I told her everything. The texts, the confrontation, the shattered glass. The elevator ride down, the Uber driver who'd asked if I was okay, concern in his eyes as he watched me struggle to input Vanessa's address with trembling fingers. "I should have seen it coming," I said, my voice hollow. The late nights, the unexplained expenses on our joint account, that hotel keycard I found in his jacket pocket 3 months ago. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. "What keycard?" "From the Four Seasons, $650 a night." When I asked him about it, he laughed it off. Said a coworker must have slipped it in his pocket as a joke. I laughed, the sound brittle even to my own ears. I wanted to believe him so badly that I swallowed my instincts and let it slide. My sister's expression hardened. "What are you going to do now?" "I don't know." But even as I spoke the words, something was shifting inside me. The fog of shock was beginning to clear, replaced by a cold, calculating clarity I hadn't known I possessed. I slept fitfully that night, waking every hour to check my phone. 27 missed calls from Daniel, 16 text messages ranging from desperate apologies to accusations that I'd embarrassed him in front of his colleagues, as if I were the one who had shattered our marriage, not him. Morning arrived with a dull gray light filtering through Vanessa's guest room curtains. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall, when the realization struck me. My daughter. 9-year-old Lily was at a sleepover at her friend's house. She had no idea her world had just imploded. With shaking hands, I texted the other mother, asking if Lily could stay for breakfast, making up an excuse about not feeling well. I needed time. Time to think, to plan, to figure out how to tell my daughter that her father had betrayed us both. As I showered, letting the hot water wash away the remains of my makeup and the stiffness in my muscles, my mind began to work with a precision that surprised me. By the time I dressed in clothes borrowed from my sister, I had the beginnings of a plan forming. First, I needed to secure our finances. The house we lived in, the one with the sprawling yard and high ceilings that Daniel loved showing off to his colleagues, wasn't even possible without me. My mother had left me an inheritance after she passed, $850,000 that I'd worked her whole life for as a teacher who saved every penny. I'd poured most of it into the down payment on our $1.2 million home in Palmer Woods. Daniel had been making the mortgage payments from our joint account, but my name was on the deed. The house was mine. I called our bank while sitting at Vanessa's kitchen table, her coffee growing cold beside me. I transferred $127,000 from our joint savings into my personal account, then froze the joint account entirely. It wouldn't stop him forever, but it would buy me time. Next, I called Patricia Winters, Detroit's most feared divorce attorney. Her $500 hourly rate made me flinch, but I knew I needed the best. I scheduled an appointment for 9 a.m., determined to be her first client of the day. By 8:30, I was sitting in the sleek downtown office building where Patricia's firm occupied the top 3 floors. My hands clutched my purse, which contained printouts of our bank statements, property records, and screenshots I'd taken of the text messages on Daniel's phone before leaving the rooftop. At precisely 9 a.m., a receptionist led me into Patricia's corner office. The attorney was a woman in her late 50s, hair cut in a severe bob, eyes sharp as she assessed me from behind her massive desk. She didn't offer platitudes or sympathy. Instead, she asked questions, direct, practical questions about assets, income, and evidence of infidelity. I laid out everything: the inheritance, the house, the years I'd stepped back from my marketing career to support Daniel's rise in the automotive industry, the text messages, the pattern of suspicious behavior. Patricia took notes, her expression never changing. When I finished, she looked up at me. "Mrs. Reynolds, based on what you've told me, we have a strong case. Michigan is a no-fault divorce state, but infidelity can impact property division and spousal support, especially given your financial contributions to the marriage and your husband's apparent deception." She outlined a strategy, clinical and precise. We would file for divorce immediately. We would request temporary orders giving me exclusive use of the marital home and primary custody of Lily. We would demand full financial disclosure, suspecting that Daniel might have hidden assets. As she spoke, something inside me grew steadier, more resolved. I wasn't just a betrayed wife. I was a strategist planning her next move. After leaving Patricia's office, I called the realtor who had helped us buy our home. I explained the situation in brief, clinical terms and asked about the process of listing the property. She was sympathetic but professional, explaining that as a co-owner, I could initiate the listing process, though both of us would need to sign the final paperwork unless a court ordered otherwise. By noon, my to-do list looked less like a breakdown and more like a battle plan. Each step I took gave me back a piece of myself I hadn't known I'd lost. The woman who had stood frozen on that rooftop, champagne glass shattered at her feet, was transforming into someone new, someone who understood that silence, when chosen deliberately, speaks volumes about our worth. Of course, Daniel tried to reach me. His calls continued throughout the day, growing increasingly frantic as he likely discovered his financial lockout. Around 2 p.m., he showed up at Vanessa's door, pounding until the neighbors peered through their blinds. I watched from the upstairs window as he paced on the sidewalk, phone glued to his ear, probably calling the bank to figure out why his cards weren't working. I didn't let him in. I didn't answer his calls. My silence was not absence. It was choice. It was strength, dressed in satin. Later that evening, when I was on the phone with Rachel, my best friend Daniel called again. "Against my better judgment," I answered. "Morgan, please." His voice low, almost pleading. "This has gotten out of hand. We can sit down, talk like adults. I love you. Don't do this to our family." Our family. The same family he risked for late-night hotel rooms and dirty texts. "You already did this," I replied flatly. "You burned it down. I'm just making sure the ashes don't choke me and our daughter." There was a pause, the kind where you can hear someone scrambling for control. Then he snapped, his voice sharp. "You can't just take everything. The accounts, the house, none of that is just yours." But it was, and I had the proof to back it up. I didn't yell, I didn't argue. I just said, "Watch me," and hung up. That night, for the first time in months, I slept soundly. Not because the pain was gone, it still sat heavy in my chest, but because I had direction. I wasn't flailing in betrayal anymore. I was moving step by step towards something that felt like justice. The next morning brought new challenges. I needed to pick up Lily from her friend's house and figure out what to tell her. How do you explain to a 9-year-old that her father betrayed her mother, that the family she knew was fracturing? I drove to the Thompsons' home, my stomach in knots. Lily bounded out to the car, all smiles and energy, chattering about the sleepover as I drove her back to Vanessa's. I listened, nodding, trying to match her enthusiasm while my mind raced ahead to the conversation we needed to have. Once at Vanessa's, I sat Lily down in the guest room where we were staying. Her eyes, so like mine, watched me curiously as I struggled to find the right words. "Honey, I need to tell you something important. Dad and I are having some problems, and we're going to be staying with Aunt Vanessa for a while." Her face fell, confusion clouding her features. "But why? Did I do something wrong?" My heart cracked at her immediate assumption of guilt. "No, sweet girl, none of this is your fault. Dad made some choices that hurt me very much, and I need some time away from him to figure things out." She asked questions I wasn't fully prepared to answer. Was Daddy coming to stay at Aunt Vanessa's too? No. Were we getting a divorce? Probably. Would she still see her father? Yes, of course. I held her as she cried, her small body shaking against mine. In that moment, my resolve hardened further. Daniel hadn't just betrayed me, he'd betrayed Lily too. He'd shattered the security of her world for what? Stolen moments with a woman who sent heart emojis and explicit texts? Later that day, I received a call from Gerald, Daniel's father. His voice was gruff, strained with emotion. "Morgan, what's happening between you two? People are talking." I had a board member ask me directly about the scene at the anniversary party. I took a long breath. "Ask your son." There was silence, then a heavy sigh. I always told him, "You were the best thing that ever happened to him. If he threw that away, he'll have to live with it." It wasn't the apology I wanted, but it was acknowledgement. Gerald knew his son was at fault. That validation steadied me further, a small piece of justice in the storm. 3 days after the rooftop incident, Daniel made his first desperate attempt to reel me back in. He showed up at Vanessa's house again, this time with an enormous bouquet of roses and a forced smile plastered on his face. Lily was watching TV in the living room, so I stepped outside, shutting the door behind me. "Morgan," he started, holding out the bouquet like it could erase everything. "Let's not make this ugly. We can fix this. I made a mistake." I stared at him, at the man who once promised to love me forever, but had instead treated me like a placeholder in his perfect image. A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk. This was a choice, over and over. His jaw clenched. He pushed the flowers toward me again. "Think about our daughter." That one stung, not because he was right, but because he dared to use Lily as a shield. I pushed the bouquet back into his chest so hard that petals fell between us. "Don't you dare bring her into this. She deserves better than a father who lies to her mother every chance he gets." His expression cracked, anger flashing through the mask. "You can't just cut me out of my own life. You think you can freeze me out, humiliate me, and walk away like you're untouchable?" I met his glare head on. "Watch me." Then I turned and went back inside, leaving him standing on the porch with crushed flowers in his hands. That night, I tucked Lily into bed in Vanessa's spare room and felt a strange calm settle over me. The storm was only just beginning, but for once, I wasn't drowning. I was steering it. My mother had always told me, when a betrayal comes, don't waste your breath arguing. Silence is not absence. Silence is choice. Silence is strength dressed in satin. At 42, I finally understood what she meant. The following week brought a flurry of legal activity. Patricia filed our divorce petition and motions for temporary orders. Daniel hired his own attorney, an old golf buddy who specialized in protecting wealthy men from gold-digging wives, a laughable accusation given that my inheritance had funded our lifestyle. I received notice that Daniel had attempted to withdraw funds from our investment accounts, only to discover I'd already placed security holds on them. His fury manifested in a barrage of texts, alternating between threats and pleas for reconciliation. Meanwhile, I met with a financial advisor recommended by Patricia. I laid out our assets, my inheritance documentation, and our household expenses. Together, we created a financial plan that would sustain Lily and me through the divorce proceedings and beyond. The advisor looked impressed when I produced detailed records of every major purchase we'd made during our marriage, including the exact amounts of my inheritance used for our home. "Most clients don't have this level of documentation," she remarked. "You've been preparing for this." I hadn't been, not consciously, but some part of me had always known this day might come. The part that noticed the late nights, the unexplained expenses, the cologne that wasn't his clinging to his shirts when he came home, the part that had maintained separate financial records, even as Daniel insisted we merge our lives completely. 2 weeks after the rooftop explosion, word reached me through Rachel that Daniel was parading Jasmine around town. Not quietly, not tucked away in hotels anymore, but openly. Dinner at expensive restaurants, drinks in bars we used to frequent, even showing up at his coworker's birthday party with her clinging to his arm like she belonged there. It wasn't love, it was performance. He was trying to prove to everyone that he was still in control, still the man to be envied. The fact that he'd chosen to flaunt his mistress so quickly told me everything I needed to know about the depth of his supposed remorse. So when Rachel suggested we go to Prime Plus proper, one of Detroit's most exclusive steakhouses, I said yes without hesitation. It wasn't an accident that I chose the same night I knew he'd be there. Daniel was a creature of habit. Thursday nights had always been when he claimed to have client dinners. Now I knew exactly what kind of clients he'd been entertaining. I wore a dress I'd bought years ago for a charity gala, a simple but elegant black number that cost $350. Daniel had barely noticed it then, commenting only that it seemed expensive for something so plain. The memory made me smile now as I slipped it on. He'd never understood the difference between flashy and elegant. The moment I walked into Prime Plus proper, I saw him. He was seated at a corner table, the kind meant for being seen rather than for privacy. Jasmine sat across from him, younger than me by at least a decade, her makeup sharp and dressed too tight for the setting, laughing a little too loudly. For a second, he didn't notice me, but when he did, the color drained from his face. I could have walked past, could have ignored him and let the silence sting. But revenge doesn't thrive in silence. It thrives in moments that spread, in words people repeat later. I walked straight to their table. Conversations around us slowed. Forks paused midair. The restaurant wasn't loud, so my voice carried easily. "Funny seeing you here." Daniel cleared his throat, trying to act unbothered. "Morgan, we're just having dinner. No need to cause a scene. No need." As if his actions hadn't been one long, drawn-out scene. I leaned closer, keeping my voice sharp but controlled. "You caused the scene the night you shoved your phone in my hand with her messages lighting up the screen." Jasmine shifted uncomfortably, her eyes darting between us. She tried to speak, but I cut her off with a look. I straightened and reached into my bag. My hands didn't shake as I pulled out the envelope I'd been carrying for days. With deliberate care, I dropped it onto the white tablecloth between their wine glasses. The thud was small, but final. "What's this?" he asked, his voice tight. "Divorce papers," I said. "You can read the details later, but here's the short version. The house, the accounts, custody of our daughter. They're mine. You get to keep your side project here." Gasps rippled through the nearby tables. A man at the next booth muttered, "Damn," under his breath. Daniel's face twisted, caught between rage and panic. "You think you can humiliate me in public again? You think this makes you look strong?" I tilted my head, my voice steady and cutting. "I don't need to think. Look around. Everyone here knows exactly what you are now, and the only thing strong about you is your ability to lie." Jasmine tried to touch his arm, but he jerked away, his composure slipping. "Morgan, we can discuss this in private." "No," I said, my words clear as glass. "You lost the right to privacy the moment you made a fool of me in public. Consider this balance." I picked up his wine glass, swirled it, then set it back down untouched. "Here's my advice. Get used to drinking alone." With that, I turned and walked toward the door, my heels clicking against the tile, each step echoing louder than the last. Behind me, the restaurant buzzed with whispers. A line had been spoken, a moment etched, the kind that would spread through Detroit's social circles by morning. At the doorway, I glanced back just once. Daniel sat frozen, papers still on the table. Jasmine staring at him like she'd just realized the man she'd latched onto was a sinking ship. I didn't smile, but inside I burned with a satisfaction so sharp it felt like oxygen after drowning. That was the second time I'd left him in ruins, and it wouldn't be the last. If there's one thing I knew about my husband, it was that he couldn't stand losing the narrative. Reputation was his oxygen, and the rooftop disaster followed by the steakhouse ambush had cut off his supply. I could almost predict his next move before he made it. He'd try to spin the story, paint himself as the victim, and cast me as the bitter, unhinged wife. Sure enough, it started with a Facebook post the next day, a carefully written paragraph about marital struggles and how we were working through difficult times privately. He framed it like we were a normal couple hitting a rough patch, not a man parading his mistress through town while I froze his accounts. He even had the nerve to write, "Please respect our family's privacy during this sensitive period." Privacy? He'd blown that to pieces when his mistress's text landed in my lap on our anniversary. The comment section split. A few of his coworkers chimed in with supportive emojis, but others weren't buying it. People had been at the rooftop party, they'd seen, and in Detroit, word spreads fast. Then came the real escalation. A local business blog picked up the story. Someone leaked that Daniel had been cut off at work, that his behavior was being questioned by his higher-ups. They even hinted at personal scandals that might affect his career prospects. That one article was enough to light a match. Twitter got hold of it next. Screenshots of Jasmine's messages, the ones I'd accidentally let slip to Rachel, who apparently had less discretion than I'd assumed, made their way online within hours. Strangers were tearing Daniel apart. Imagine cheating on your wife with this level of stupidity. Men like this are why prenups exist. My condolences to Morgan, but damn, she's handling it like a queen. And then the hashtag, #texted the wife. It started small, with people mocking him, but by the weekend it went viral. Memes popped up everywhere. Fake text threads, jokes about sending the wrong message. Even a minor celebrity weighed in with a vague tweet about men exposing themselves by accident. Every time I opened my phone, I saw Daniel's downfall spreading. And the best part? I didn't have to lift a finger. The internet did the work for me. Of course, he tried to fight back. He gave an interview to a local radio station, his voice dripping with fake calm. "I've made mistakes," he admitted, "but Morgan has always been unstable, and she's blowing this out of proportion for attention." That was his fatal error, because right after the broadcast, more receipts dropped. A friend of his, clearly fed up with his arrogance, leaked emails he'd sent to Jasmine from his work account. They weren't just flirty. They were vulgar, explicit, and time-stamped during office hours. His employer couldn't ignore it anymore. Daniel was suspended pending investigation, but everyone knew what that meant. His career, the shiny ladder he'd climbed for years, was splintering beneath him. Jasmine didn't take it well either. Through the grapevine, I heard she'd been pounded online, her name trending locally once people connected the dots. Photos of her with Daniel surfaced, and the comments weren't kind. She locked her accounts within a day. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. She'd signed up for a life built on lies. Now she was drowning in them. Meanwhile, my phone was blowing up with messages from women I didn't even know. "Stay strong, Queen. We're rooting for you. He doesn't deserve a second of your time." For once, I wasn't invisible. For once, people saw me. Not as his wife, not as the quiet supporter, but as the woman who refused to be humiliated quietly. Daniel tried one last desperate stunt, a Facebook Live video, rambling about forgiveness and family. His eyes were wild, his tie crooked. It didn't make him look sympathetic. It made him look pathetic. The comments lit him up. "Bro, log off." Forgiveness after those texts? This ain't it, Chief. I watched it unfold from Vanessa's couch with a glass of wine in hand, Lily asleep upstairs. For the first time since the betrayal, I felt peace. Not because it was over. It wasn't. But because the world finally saw the truth. Daniel had spent years building an image. I had spent years supporting it. And now, in less than a month, it all crumbled. Not from me screaming, not from me begging, but from the simple, undeniable fact of his own actions. The PR war was over, and he had lost spectacularly. I always thought courtrooms smelled like old paper and nerves. When I walked into mine for the first hearing, that thought crystallized. The air was stale, heavy with tension, as though the walls themselves had soaked up decades of broken promises and financial bloodbaths. Daniel sat across the aisle, eyes hollow, suit rumpled. He looked smaller than the man I'd married, not physically. He was still tall, still broad-shouldered, but the arrogance that once filled every inch of him had drained away. What sat before me was a man stripped of control, and he hated every second of it. My lawyer, Patricia, was razor sharp, guiding me through each step. She laid out everything, the texts, the emails, the proof of my inheritance funding our home. Each receipt was a nail in the coffin of his defense. Daniel tried to interrupt, muttering about marital assets and shared property, but the judge shut him down quickly. When it came to custody of Lily, I didn't hesitate. I wanted full custody with supervised visitation for him, if he proved stable enough. Patricia presented evidence of his reckless spending, his inability to prioritize family, and the public spectacle he'd created. Watching his jaw clench as the judge nodded along gave me a twisted sense of relief. The financial dismantling wasn't just paperwork. It was war. The accounts I had already secured were protected. The house was officially transferred into my name, thanks to the inheritance documentation. Daniel's attempt to argue otherwise backfired when Patricia produced a signed statement from the realtor confirming I had made the $850,000 down payment. Piece by piece, his empire crumbled. The company he worked for had already suspended him. But once the court documents became public record, they didn't just cut ties, they fired him. Officially, it was conduct unbecoming of an executive, but everyone knew it was the scandal. In Detroit, where reputations matter almost as much as profits, no one wanted to be associated with him. And the dominoes kept falling. His father, Gerald, called me one night, his voice sharper than I'd ever heard. "Morgan, I raised him better than this. I can't believe he threw everything away for a fling." He paused, then added words I never expected. "If you need anything, financially, legally, my support is with you, not him." That was the moment I knew Daniel had lost not just a wife, but an entire family. Gerald had always been his safety net, bailing him out when he made mistakes, smoothing things over when his arrogance caused problems. Now that net was gone, cut clean. His brother was no kinder. He told me bluntly at a family gathering for a cousin's birthday, "You deserve better, Morgan. He's on his own now." Even Jasmine abandoned him. She'd been clinging on for the status, the money, the gifts. But when the cards declined, when his name was dragged through hashtags and blogs, she realized she wasn't boarding a yacht. She was sinking with a wreck. She stopped showing up at restaurants with him, stopped answering his calls. Through Rachel's network, I heard she'd already moved on to someone else, a senior partner at a law firm with a stable $475,000 income and less baggage. By the third month of proceedings, Daniel was a shell. He showed up late to hearings, unshaven, his lawyer whispering furiously in his ear. He tried to paint me as vindictive, as if I was destroying him out of spite. But the evidence was irrefutable. Years of infidelity, reckless financial behavior, emotional neglect. The judge didn't buy his act for a second. When the final ruling came, it was brutal in its clarity. Custody, mine. House, mine. Accounts, mine. Child support, mandated with strict oversight. He was left with nothing but his personal belongings, a used car, and the tarnished remains of his reputation. I walked out of the courtroom that day with Lily's hand in mine, sunlight spilling across the steps. For the first time in years, I felt free. Not just legally, not just financially, but emotionally. The chains I had carried, his debts, his lies, his betrayals, were gone. Meanwhile, Daniel unraveled. Without money, without family support, without a mistress to prop him up, he spiraled. Friends who once laughed at his jokes now avoided his calls. Former colleagues crossed the street to dodge him. His apartment was a dramatic downgrade from everything he'd bragged about. A small rental on the edge of the city, paint peeling and pipes groaning. I didn't see it firsthand. I didn't need to. The whispers reached me, and each one confirmed what I already knew. He had become irrelevant. The last time I passed him in court, during the final paperwork signing, he looked at me with eyes that begged for mercy. But there was no mercy left. He had burned it all, squandered every chance. And as I walked past him, Lily's hand still tucked in mine, I realized something that made my chest ache with both grief and relief. He wasn't my problem anymore. He had built his own downfall. All I did was stop carrying it for him. It happened on a gray afternoon in late fall. Detroit had that damp chill that seeps into your bones, the kind that makes the whole city feel tired. I was leaving the courthouse after signing the last round of documents that officially closed the divorce. Patricia shook my hand, congratulated me, and walked off to her next appointment. For me, it wasn't a celebration. It was release. And that's when I saw him. Daniel stood by the steps, hunched against the wind, his coat too thin for the weather. For a moment, I almost didn't recognize him. The man who once walked into every room like he owned it now looked like he was trying not to take up space at all. His hair was unkempt, his eyes sunken. He clutched a folder of papers like it was a lifeline. "Morgan," he said, his voice rough. I didn't stop walking, but he stepped in front of me, blocking my path. "Please, just a minute," I sighed, pulling my scarf tighter against the cold. "What do you want?" He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. I don't know where else to turn. You've taken everything. The house, the money, custody. I don't even have my father's support anymore. He won't take my calls. My own brother won't look at me. His voice cracked. "I'm drowning." I looked at him. Really looked at him. This was the man who once held my hand at our wedding, who kissed my forehead when Lily was born. And yet, this was also the man who betrayed me, who humiliated me in front of everyone, who gaslit me into silence for years. Both men lived inside him, but only one had won. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a photograph. Lily smiling at her school recital last spring. His hands shook as he held it up. "I miss her. I miss us. I miss you." I didn't take the picture. "You don't miss me," I said flatly. "You miss the version of me who cleaned up your messes and made your life easy. That woman doesn't exist anymore." He flinched like I'd slapped him. "I made mistakes." "Mistakes?" My voice sharpened. "A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A mistake is saying something cruel in anger. What you did was deliberate over and over again. You chose her, you chose the lies, you chose to risk everything we built. And you laughed while doing it. Don't you dare call that a mistake." He dropped his gaze, his lips trembling. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I thought I was untouchable. I thought you'd never leave." There it was, the truth, the arrogance that had fueled him all along. He never thought I'd fight back. He never thought I had it in me. "I loved you," I said quietly. "God help me, I did. I gave you years of my life, my mother's inheritance, my body, my trust. I carried your image on my back while you played the role of the perfect husband. And what did I get in return? Humiliation, lies, a knife in the back I never saw coming." Tears welled in his eyes. He reached out as if to touch my arm, but I stepped back. "I don't need your apologies," I said. "They don't mean anything now. You had chance after chance to be the man you pretended to be. And you failed, not just me. You failed our daughter. You failed yourself." He dropped his hand, defeated. For a long moment, the only sound was the wind whipping between the buildings. Finally, I took a step closer, my voice low but sharp as glass. "You want the truth? You're the architect of your own destruction. Every brick in the ruins of your life, you laid them yourself." His face crumpled, a mix of shame and desperation. But I didn't give him the dignity of comfort. I turned, my heels clicking against the concrete, and walked away. I didn't look back, not once, because the past was behind me, and I had no intention of ever carrying it forward again. 1 year later, my life looked nothing like the ashes Daniel had left me in, and for that, I was grateful. I'd moved into a home that finally felt like mine, not a showroom for his ego. It wasn't the biggest or the flashiest, but it was warm, filled with light, laughter, and the quiet steadiness I'd been craving for years. I'd paid $450,000 for it, a fraction of our old home's price, but 10 times more authentic. The decor featured pieces from my mother's collection of antiques, including a framed needlepoint that read, "Dignity cannot be taken, only surrendered." Lily had her own space, decorated with drawings and posters, a sanctuary untouched by lies. At night, we cooked dinner together, sang along to whatever was on the radio, and she'd fall asleep knowing her world was safe. I'd established a $50,000 college fund for her from the divorce settlement, something Daniel had always postponed. I went back to work too, not as a concession, but as a reclamation. The marketing career I'd shelved for his ambitions became my own again. I started at a smaller firm, working my way up quickly until I secured a $92,000 position as a senior marketing strategist. Clients valued me for my ideas, my drive, not my husband's title. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't behind anyone's shadow. I was my own light. People still whispered about Daniel sometimes, though the noise was fading. His name came up less and less in social circles, and when it did, it was with pity, not admiration. He was no longer the man people envied. He was a cautionary tale. His apartment remained small, his job prospects slimmer by the day. Even his attempts to rebuild his reputation fell flat. He'd tried to reinvent himself as a consultant, but the scandal followed him like a shadow. The hashtag had died down, but the memory remained fresh in Detroit's corporate world. And yet, I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. His downfall wasn't my victory. My life was. There were mornings when I'd sip my coffee on the porch, the sun rising over Detroit's skyline, and I'd feel a calmness I'd never known in the years I spent fighting to keep my marriage alive. Freedom tasted different than I expected. It wasn't loud, it wasn't filled with fireworks. It was steady, quiet, like breathing clean air after being locked in a room too long. Lily noticed it too. One night as we were brushing our teeth side by side, she looked at me in the mirror and said, "Mom, you smile more now." It nearly broke me, because children see everything. She had carried the weight of tension in our house just as much as I had, and now she was lighter. We both were. Sometimes people asked if I hated Daniel. The truth? I don't waste energy on hate anymore. Hate ties you to someone just as much as love does. He doesn't deserve that power. What I feel now is nothing. A hollow space where he used to matter, replaced by the certainty that I survived, I rebuilt, and I thrived. The betrayal had nearly shattered me, but in the end, it became the fire that forged me into something stronger. If you had told me 2 years ago that I'd be here, stable, independent, unafraid, I would have laughed. Back then, I thought survival meant keeping the marriage together. Now I know survival meant letting it burn, walking away, and choosing myself. As for Daniel, he's a ghost in the city we once ruled together. People barely mention his name anymore. And when they do, it's with a shake of the head, as if remembering a headline from long ago. He wanted to be untouchable. Instead, he became forgettable. I've joined a support group of women over 50 who've survived similar betrayals. We meet weekly, sharing wisdom across generations. A 68-year-old former judge told me words I've carried like a talisman. I lost my marriage at 45 but found myself at 46. Better to leave as myself than stay as someone else's mistake. A 72-year-old business owner shared her story of building a $3 million company after her husband left her for his secretary. "The day he came asking for money was the day I knew I'd won," she said, eyes sparkling with quiet triumph. I don't look back with longing. I don't look back with regret. I look forward to Lily's future, to mine, to the quiet strength that comes from knowing I didn't just survive betrayal. I rose above it, And on the nights when I reflect on it all, when the memories threaten to sting, I remind myself of the truth I learned the hard way. Betrayal isn't the end. Sometimes it's the beginning of freedom. The day I transferred $127,000 from our joint accounts into my personal account started a financial war Daniel wasn't prepared to fight. I'd learned from Patricia that most divorcing spouses make the critical error of waiting too long to secure assets. By moving swiftly, I'd preserved what was rightfully mine and denied Daniel access to the cash he'd grown accustomed to splashing around Detroit's finest establishments. The first indication that my financial strategy was working came at 9:17 a.m., 3 days after the rooftop incident. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. Just saw your husband at Starbucks on Woodward. His card got declined for a $4.75 coffee. The look on his face when he had to dig through his wallet for cash was priceless. I didn't respond, but a flicker of satisfaction warmed my chest. Daniel had always treated money as an extension of his power. The ability to pay for anything at any time without thought was fundamental to his identity. Now that identity was cracking, one declined transaction at a time. By noon, his calls had increased to one every 20 minutes. I watched his name flash on my screen, 17 times in total, without answering once. Each unanswered call was a small victory in a silent battle he didn't yet understand he was fighting. My mother's words echoed in my mind. The most powerful response isn't shouting back, it's choosing not to hear. Meanwhile, I focused on fortifying my position. Patricia connected me with a forensic accountant who specialized in high-conflict divorces. We met in her downtown office, the Detroit skyline visible through floor-to-ceiling windows that made me feel simultaneously exposed and powerful. The accountant, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and no-nonsense demeanor, reviewed the documentation I'd compiled over the years. Mrs. Reynolds, I'm impressed. Most clients come to me with shopping bags full of unsorted receipts and tearful apologies. You've given me a spreadsheet categorizing 7 years of expenses, including dates, amounts, and sources of funds. She tapped my inheritance documentation with a manicured fingernail. This $850,000 contribution to the marital home will be particularly important. Michigan courts take premarital assets seriously, especially when they can be traced directly to current holdings. We spent 3 hours analyzing financial records, identifying patterns in Daniel's spending that pointed to his affair: hotel charges, unexplained cash withdrawals, restaurant bills too large for one person. The accountant flagged a recurring monthly charge to a downtown apartment building that I'd never noticed before. This might be worth investigating, she suggested. It could be a hidden asset, a property he leased under the business account but uses for personal purposes. I left the meeting with a clearer picture of our financial landscape and a strategy to protect what was mine. That evening, I called the realtor who had helped us purchase our Palmer Woods home. The conversation was brief but productive. I initiated the process of listing the property for $135 million, significantly more than we'd paid thanks to renovations I'd overseen, using another $75,000 of my inheritance. That night, as Lily slept in Vanessa's guest room, I sat at the kitchen table with my sister, sharing a bottle of wine neither of us was really drinking. I never liked him, Vanessa admitted, breaking the comfortable silence. Even at your wedding, I saw how he charmed everyone but barely looked at you during his speech. It was always about him. Why didn't you say anything? I swirled the untouched wine in my glass, watching it catch the light. Would you have listened? Her question wasn't accusatory, just honest. I considered for a moment. Probably not. I was too busy being the perfect support system. The realization settled heavily. I wanted so badly to believe I was building something permanent that I ignored the foundation cracks. Vanessa reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You're rebuilding now, on solid ground this time. The next morning brought a new challenge. Lily needed to return to school, which meant facing questions from teachers, administrators, and other parents. I dreaded the sympathetic looks, the hushed conversations that would stop when I approached, the inevitable gossip that would swirl around my daughter. Before driving her to school, I sat Lily down for a conversation I'd been rehearsing in my head for days. We settled on the edge of the bed, her small hands clasped in mine. Lily, you're going back to school today, and people might have heard things about mom and dad. They might ask questions or say things that make you uncomfortable. Her eyes, mirrors of my own, watched me carefully. Like what? Like why you're staying with Aunt Vanessa instead of at our house, or why Dad and I aren't together right now. I chose my words deliberately, walking the fine line between honesty and protection. If anyone says anything that upsets you, you can tell your teacher or call me right away. You don't have to answer questions you don't want to. Lily considered this, her brow furrowing in concentration. Madison's parents got divorced last year. She said it was because her dad found a girlfriend who wasn't her mom. The innocent observation hit like a punch to the sternum. That does happen sometimes, honey. Is that what Dad did? Her directness, a quality she'd inherited from me, caught me off guard. I took a deep breath. Yes, Dad made choices that hurt our family, but none of this is your fault, and both of us still love you very much. But you don't love each other anymore? It wasn't a question. No, sweetie, not in the way married people should. Lily nodded, processing this with a maturity that made my heart ache. Mom, did you know Grandma told me something before she died? She said, always know where your seat is, and if they don't offer you one, make your own table. Tears pricked at my eyes. My mother's wisdom, passed down through generations, landing on my daughter's shoulders at exactly the moment she needed it. Your grandmother was very smart. I think she meant we shouldn't wait for people to give us what we deserve. Lily's insight stole my breath. Are we making our own table now? I pulled her into a hug, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo. Yes, Lily, that's exactly what we're doing. The school drop-off was easier than expected. Lily's teacher, Mrs. Henderson, pulled me aside with genuine concern in her eyes. Morgan, I heard what happened. We'll keep an extra eye on Lily, and if you need anything, schedule adjustments, someone to talk to, please let me know. The simple kindness nearly broke the composure I'd worked so hard to maintain. Thank you. Just let me know if she seems upset or if any kids give her a hard time. Of course, children can be remarkably resilient, you know, often more than we give them credit for. As I walked back to the car, my phone buzzed with a calendar notification. My appointment with Patricia was in an hour. We needed to prepare for the preliminary hearing scheduled for the following week. I drove downtown, my mind racing through financial statements, custody arrangements, and the mountain of documentation we'd need to present. Patricia's office buzzed with the controlled chaos of a successful legal practice. Junior associates hurried between conference rooms, paralegals ferried document boxes, and the phones rang incessantly. Patricia met me in the lobby, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that radiated authority. Good news, she said as we walked to her office. Judge Harmon has been assigned to your case. She's fair, but has zero tolerance for stalling tactics or hiding assets, both of which I expect from Daniel's attorney based on his reputation. Then, once seated in her office, Patricia spread several documents across her desk. We've filed for temporary orders on custody, support, and exclusive use of the marital home. Since you're currently staying with your sister, we need to get you back into your house as soon as possible. Courts prefer to maintain the status quo for children, and having Lily in her familiar environment will strengthen our position. What about Daniel's claims to the house? He's been telling everyone it's his achievement, his purchase. Patricia's smile was razor sharp. Let him. The paper trail tells the truth. $850,000 of your inheritance went into that down payment. His name may be on the mortgage alongside yours, but we can prove the source of funds. Michigan law is clear about protecting premarital assets, especially inherited ones. We spent the next 2 hours reviewing financial disclosures, strategizing custody arrangements, and preparing for potential counterarguments from Daniel's attorney. Patricia was thorough, anticipating moves I hadn't considered. One more thing, she said as our meeting concluded. Daniel's going to try to paint you as vindictive and unstable. He's already started with that radio interview. Don't take the bait. No angry texts, no public confrontations beyond what's already happened. Let the legal process do its work. I nodded, thinking of the steakhouse scene. Too late for no public confrontations. That one might actually help us. It demonstrates you learned about the affair publicly, suffered humiliation, and still maintained enough composure to follow legal channels rather than resorting to anything destructive. Patricia gathered the documents into a neat stack. Judges are human. They understand righteous anger. What they don't tolerate is pettiness or using children as pawns. As I left Patricia's office, my phone buzzed with another text from Rachel. Jasmine just made her Instagram public again. Girl's already posting pics with some silver fox lawyer. Your husband is done. I should have felt vindicated, but instead, a wave of exhaustion washed over me. This constant vigilance, the strategy sessions, the documentation. It was all necessary but draining. For a brief moment, I allowed myself to feel the full weight of what had happened. 7 years of marriage, shattered in an instant. A future I'd planned, suddenly erased and requiring complete reconstruction. But beneath the exhaustion lay something stronger, a quiet, steady resolve that had been dormant for too long. I straightened my shoulders and headed for my car. There was work to do. The preliminary hearing arrived with surprising swiftness. Just 16 days after discovering the text that ended my marriage, I sat in a downtown courtroom, Patricia beside me, facing Daniel and his attorney across the aisle. The room smelled of furniture polish and anxiety, an undertone of desperation clinging to the polished wood surfaces. Daniel looked almost unrecognizable. His normally immaculate appearance had deteriorated, his suit wrinkled, his tie slightly askew, dark circles shadowing his eyes. He attempted to catch my gaze several times, but I kept my focus on Judge Harmon, a stern-faced woman in her 60s who reviewed our filings with methodical precision. The hearing proceeded with the formal detachment of legal proceedings. Patricia presented our requests: temporary exclusive use of the marital home for me and Lily, continuation of the financial status quo with the accounts I'd already secured, and a temporary custody arrangement that granted Daniel supervised visitation until a full evaluation could be completed. Daniel's attorney, a slick man with an expensive haircut and a reputation for aggressive tactics, argued that I had ambushed my husband, frozen marital assets without cause, and was attempting to alienate him from his daughter. Judge Harmon listened to both sides, occasionally interrupting with pointed questions. When Daniel's attorney claimed I had no right to transfer funds from joint accounts, the judge fixed him with a steely gaze. Counselor, are you suggesting that Mrs. Reynolds did not have legal access to accounts bearing her name? Because that would be an interesting interpretation of banking law. The attorney backpedaled quickly. No, Your Honor, simply that the timing and amount suggest a deliberate attempt to deprive my client of marital assets. The timing, Patricia interjected smoothly, directly followed Mrs. Reynolds' discovery of Mr. Reynolds' infidelity. Infidelity he has not denied. My client took reasonable steps to secure assets that include her substantial inheritance contributions. The judge nodded thoughtfully before addressing Daniel directly. Mr. Reynolds, are you currently employed? Daniel shifted uncomfortably. I'm between positions at the moment. My previous employer placed me on administrative leave pending an investigation. And the nature of this investigation? His attorney attempted to intervene, but Judge Harmon raised a hand to silence him. I'm asking your client a direct question. Daniel's voice faltered. It concerns inappropriate communications sent from my work email. To the woman with whom you were having an extramarital relationship? The direct question hung in the air for a painful moment. Yes, Your Honor. Judge Harmon made a notation in her file before looking up at both parties. Here's my ruling on temporary matters. Mrs. Reynolds will have exclusive use of the marital home. Mr. Reynolds will vacate the premises within 48 hours, accompanied by a court officer to collect personal belongings only. The current financial arrangement will remain in place until full disclosure and evaluation can be completed. Regarding custody, Mrs. Reynolds will have temporary primary physical custody, with Mr. Reynolds granted supervised visitation twice weekly at the front of the court facility. Daniel's face crumpled. His attorney leaned over, whispering urgently, but Daniel shook his head, defeat evident in every line of his body. As we exited the courtroom, Patricia squeezed my arm gently. That went as well as we could have hoped. Judge Harmon clearly sees through his attorney's theatrics. I nodded, a complex mix of emotions churning beneath my composed exterior. Victory felt hollow when measured against the cost. Not the money or even the marriage, but the innocence lost, the trust shattered, the family broken. Outside the courthouse, Daniel hurried to catch up with me, his attorney calling after him to no avail. "Morgan, please, this is insane. Supervised visitation? Like I'm some kind of danger to my own daughter?" I turned to face him, keeping my voice low and controlled. "You showed incredibly poor judgment in your personal life. Why should I trust your judgment with our child?" "I made a mistake. I'm not a criminal." His voice rose, drawing attention from passers-by. "Keep your voice down. This isn't about punishing you. It's about protecting Lily while we figure out what kind of father you're going to be moving forward." His face darkened. "This is about punishing me, and you know it. You're enjoying watching me squirm." The accusation landed like a slap. For a moment, I examined my own motivations. Was there truth in what he said? Did some part of me relish his downfall? "I'm not enjoying any of this," I finally replied, the words heavy with truth. "But I won't apologize for protecting what matters, my daughter and my dignity. You gambled with both and lost." I walked away, leaving him standing on the courthouse steps, a diminished version of the man who once commanded rooms with his presence. There was no satisfaction in his humiliation, only a grim recognition that consequences have a way of finding everyone eventually. 2 days later, I returned to our Palmer Woods home, accompanied by Patricia and a court officer who would supervise Daniel's removal of personal items. The house felt different somehow, larger, emptier, as if the absence of lies created additional space. Daniel arrived precisely at the appointed time, his brother Eric beside him, looking uncomfortable and apologetic. They barely spoke as Daniel gathered clothing, personal mementos, and toiletries from the master bedroom and bathroom. The court officer monitored carefully, ensuring no financial documents or household items disappeared into the duffel bags and boxes they'd brought. I remained in the kitchen, unable to watch as Daniel moved through the house we'd shared, collecting pieces of his life. Lily was at school, spared the awkwardness of this transition. Patricia sat beside me, occasionally squeezing my hand when the sounds from upstairs, drawers opening, closet doors sliding, became too loud in the quiet house. "Almost done," she assured me after an hour had passed. "You're doing great." When Daniel came downstairs, he paused in the kitchen doorway, several boxes stacked in his arms. Eric stood behind him, carrying 2 more. "I'll need to come back for my golf clubs and the items in the garage." "The court order specified today only," Patricia responded before I could speak. "If additional items are needed, you can submit a request through proper channels." Daniel's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. Instead, he looked directly at me. "Morgan, this house, we built this life together. Don't throw it all away because of one mistake." I met his gaze steadily. "This house was built with my mother's inheritance, and it wasn't one mistake, Daniel. It was hundreds of small betrayals that led to one spectacular implosion. Please leave." After they departed, I walked through the house, opening windows to let fresh air circulate. Each room held memories, some beautiful, some painful, all now tinged with the knowledge that the foundation had been flawed from the start. In Lily's room, I sat on her bed, surrounded by stuffed animals and books, wondering how to rebuild her sense of security. The divorce would change her life irrevocably, but perhaps the greater damage would have come from raising her in a home filled with lies and silent resentment. That evening, I brought Lily home from Vanessa's. She ran through the house like someone returning from a long journey, checking that her favorite things remained in their places, that her world, though shaken, still existed in some recognizable form. "Is Daddy coming back?" she asked as I tucked her into bed. "No, honey. Daddy has a new apartment now. You'll visit him twice a week, and the visits will be at a special place where counselors can help you both adjust to this change." She nodded, absorbing this information with the remarkable adaptability of children. "Will you be sad here without him?" The question caught me off guard with its perceptiveness. I might be sad sometimes about the way things changed, but I won't be sad about being here with you. This is our home now, just us. Lily's small hand found mine in the dim light of her bedroom. I think that's okay. You smile more when Daddy's not around. Children see everything. They absorb the tension, catalog the silences, note the forced smiles. Lily had been witnessing my unhappiness long before I admitted it to myself. Get some sleep now. Tomorrow's a new day. As I closed her door, leaving it cracked just the way she liked, I felt something shift inside me, a quiet certainty that we would be okay, Lily and I, in this house that was now truly ours. The next 2 weeks brought a strange new routine. Lily attended school while I worked remotely, accepting freelance marketing projects that allowed me flexibility. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, I drove Lily to the friend of the court facility, where Daniel met her for 2-hour supervised visits. I never went inside, choosing instead to sit in my car or at a nearby coffee shop, using the time to work or simply breathe. According to the supervisor's reports, Daniel was making an effort, bringing appropriate activities, asking about school, maintaining a positive attitude despite the artificial environment. Part of me was relieved. Another part resented that he could compartmentalize so easily, being a devoted father for 4 hours a week, while the mess he'd created consumed the rest of our lives. Meanwhile, the divorce proceedings continued their methodical pace. Financial disclosures revealed exactly what I'd suspected. Daniel had been maintaining a separate apartment downtown, a sleek one-bedroom that cost $10,500 monthly, paid through his corporate expense account as a supposed client meeting space. The discovery provided additional leverage in our negotiations, proving both financial impropriety and premeditated deception. The forensic accountant identified $31,000 in misused company funds over the past year alone, expenses Daniel had claimed as business-related, but were actually dinners, gifts, and hotel stays with Jasmine. This information, once provided to his employer, transformed his administrative leave into termination. The company couldn't risk association with someone who had so blatantly violated their financial policies. 3 weeks after moving back into our home, I received an unexpected visitor. Gerald, Daniel's father, stood on my doorstep one Sunday afternoon, his tall frame somehow diminished by age and disappointment. "Morgan, I hope I'm not intruding. Is Lily here?" His voice carried the gravelly texture of someone who had spent decades in boardrooms. "She's at a friend's birthday party. Would you like to come in?" I stepped aside, allowing him into the foyer. Gerald moved through the house with the familiarity of someone who had visited many times, settling in the living room chair he always chose. "I wanted to see how you both are doing, and to offer my help, if you need it." I sat across from him, studying the man who had raised Daniel to believe success was measured by appearances and achievements rather than character. "We're managing. Lily misses her grandparents, though. Camille and I miss her too." He hesitated, discomfort evident in his posture. "I spoke with Daniel yesterday. He's not doing well." "I'm sorry to hear that." The words were genuine, even as I maintained my emotional distance. Gerald leaned forward, elbows on knees. "I failed him, Morgan. Raised him to chase the wrong things, to believe image was more important than substance. Watching him destroy what you built together, it's forced me to reckon with my own part in shaping him." The admission surprised me. Gerald had always seemed as invested in appearances as his son, the patriarch of a family that valued status above all else. "It's not too late for him to learn different values," I offered, not sure why I felt compelled to provide comfort. "Perhaps, but it may be too late for your marriage, and that's the real tragedy." Gerald's eyes, so like Daniel's, held genuine regret. "I came today to tell you that Camille and I consider you family, regardless of the divorce. We support your decisions and want to maintain our relationship with you and Lily." Something tight in my chest loosened slightly. "Thank you. That means more than you know. If you need anything, financially, legally, or otherwise, you have our support. Not Daniel's, yours." He reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew an envelope. "This is for Lily's college fund. We'd planned to set it up as a surprise for your anniversary before everything happened." I accepted the envelope, feeling its substantial weight. "Gerald, you don't have to—" "Yes, I do. Daniel made his choices. Now we're making ours. He stood, straightening his jacket with the practiced motion of a man accustomed to boardroom exits. Tell Lily we'll see her next weekend, if that's all right with you. Camille's planning to bake those chocolate chip cookies she loves. After Gerald left, I opened the envelope to find documentation for a $50,000 college fund established in Lily's name, with me as the custodian. The gesture represented more than money. It was a declaration of loyalty, a redrawing of family lines that placed Lily and me on the inside, Daniel on the outside. The irony wasn't lost on me. The man who had built his life around appearing successful had lost the respect of the very people he most wanted to impress. As spring arrived in Detroit, bringing tentative warmth after a bitter winter, the legal proceedings accelerated. Daniel's initial attempts to fight for equal custody had weakened as the realities of his situation became clearer. His termination from the automotive company had left him struggling financially, forcing him to move from the downtown apartment to a much smaller rental in a less prestigious area. His dating life, once so important to his ego that he risked everything for it, had collapsed as well. Jasmine had indeed moved on to the lawyer Rachel had mentioned, leaving Daniel to navigate the dating scene with diminished resources and a tarnished reputation. According to the Detroit gossip circuit, which somehow always found its way to Rachel and then to me, he'd been rejected by several women once they learned who he was. The texted, the wife guy, the executive fired for misusing company funds. In a strange way, I pitied him. Daniel had always derived his sense of worth from external validation, the admiration of colleagues, the envy of friends, the attention of women. Without these mirrors reflecting back the image he craved, he seemed lost, untethered from his own identity. Our interactions remained minimal and focused entirely on Lily. The supervised visitations continued, though Daniel had filed a motion to have the supervision requirement removed. Patricia advised me not to fight this particular battle. He's been consistent with visits, follows all guidelines, and the supervisors report positive interactions. Fighting this would make you appear vindictive, which doesn't serve our larger goals. I agreed, though not without reservation. The supervised visits had provided a structure that felt safe, a buffer between Daniel's poor judgment and our daughter. But Patricia was right. Strategic concessions would strengthen our position on more critical matters like financial settlement and primary custody. One Tuesday afternoon, as I sat in the coffee shop during Daniel's visitation with Lily, my phone buzzed with a notification from the realtor. We had an offer on the house, $132 million, just slightly below asking price, with a quick closing timeline. The potential buyers, a surgeon and his wife relocating from Chicago, had toured the property twice and fallen in love with the renovated kitchen I'd designed using another portion of my inheritance. The offer represented another step toward independence, another tie to Daniel severed. Selling the house meant dividing the proceeds, but with my substantial down payment protected as separate property, I would walk away with enough to purchase a comfortable home in a good school district without a mortgage, financial security many divorced women never achieve. I called Patricia immediately to discuss the offer. It's solid, she confirmed after reviewing the terms, and strategically timed. Daniel's counter-petition for the house is scheduled for hearing next week. Having a legitimate offer in hand strengthens our position that selling is the most equitable solution. Will he fight it? I still struggled to predict Daniel's reactions, finding his behavior increasingly erratic as the divorce progressed. He might try, but he has no grounds. The house needs to be sold or bought out by one party. He can't afford to buy you out, especially with your inheritance contribution protected. His only play would be delaying tactics, which Judge Harmon has already shown little patience for. The prediction proved accurate. At the hearing, Daniel's attorney attempted to argue that selling the family home during divorce proceedings would create additional trauma for Lily. Judge Harmon, reviewing the documentation of my inheritance contribution and the current offer, was unmoved. Mr. Reynolds, the court understands your concern for your daughter's well-being. However, financial realities must be addressed. Unless you can produce funds to buy out Mrs. Reynolds' equity, including her substantial separate property contribution, the sale will proceed. This will allow both parties to establish appropriate separate residences. Daniel's attorney leaned over, whispering urgently, but Daniel shook his head. "I can't, Your Honor," he admitted, defeat evident in his voice. "I don't have access to that kind of capital at present." The judge nodded, making a notation in her file. "Then the court approves the sale. Proceeds will be held in escrow until final property division is determined, with the exception of Mrs. Reynolds' documented inheritance contribution, which will be released to her immediately upon closing." As we left the courtroom, Daniel hurried to catch up with me in the hallway. "You're really doing this? Selling our home?" "It stopped being our home the moment you betrayed our family." I kept walking, unwilling to engage in another public confrontation. "Morgan, please. I'm drowning here. The legal fees, the new apartment, no income. I can't keep up. Can we just talk directly without the attorneys? Figure out something that works for both of us?" I paused, turning to face him. "That's exactly what we're doing through proper legal channels. If you're struggling financially, perhaps you should reconsider the settlement offer Patricia sent to your attorney last week. It's more than fair considering the circumstances." His expression hardened. "Fair? You get the house proceeds, primary custody, and I'm supposed to restart my life with nothing?" "You don't get the house proceeds, Daniel. You get your share of the equity minus my inheritance contribution. That's not nothing. It's exactly what you're entitled to under the law. As for restarting your life, that was your choice the moment you decided our marriage vows were optional." He flinched as if struck. "I never wanted a divorce. I made a mistake, but I never stopped loving you." The words hung in the air between us, both tragic and absurd. "Love isn't what you did, Daniel. Love is what you betrayed. I suggest you accept the settlement offer before Judge Harmon makes decisions that could be far less favorable to you." I walked away, leaving him standing in the courthouse hallway, a man finally confronting the consequences of his choices. There was no satisfaction in his struggles, only the grim recognition that justice and pain often travel the same path. The house sold quickly, closing just 3 weeks after the offer was accepted. I received $937,000 from the sale, my $850,000 inheritance contribution, plus a portion of the appreciation and equity built during our marriage. The remaining proceeds went into escrow pending final settlement, though Daniel had finally agreed to terms after his attorney convinced him that continuing to fight would only increase his legal fees without changing the outcome. With the house sold, I needed to find a new home for Lily and me. The process felt simultaneously daunting and liberating, the first major life decision I'd made without considering Daniel's preferences or needs. I worked with a different realtor, explaining exactly what I wanted: a smaller but comfortable home in a good school district, preferably with a yard for Lily and an office space where I could continue building my freelance marketing business. After viewing 7 properties, I found it: a charming colonial in Birmingham with 4 bedrooms, a renovated kitchen, and a backyard with mature maple trees. At $450,000, it cost considerably less than our Palmer Woods home, but offered everything we needed in a community known for excellent schools. I made an offer the same day, paying cash from my house proceeds to avoid a mortgage and the financial vulnerability that came with it. While waiting for the closing, Lily and I stayed with Vanessa again, our temporary return to her guest room feeling different this time. A way station on a journey forward rather than an emergency shelter from disaster. Lily seemed to understand the distinction, approaching our house hunting with enthusiasm rather than anxiety. "Will I still go to the same school?" she asked one evening as we looked at photos of the Birmingham house. "No, honey. You'll go to a new school that's closer to our new home. But I've checked, and it's an excellent school with an art program you'll love." She considered this, her expression thoughtful. "Will Daddy know where we live?" The question caught me off guard. "Of course. He'll need to know where to pick you up for his visitation days. Why do you ask?" Lily shrugged, suddenly interested in her fingernails. "Sometimes at our visits, he asks a lot of questions about where we're staying and what we're doing. It makes me feel weird, like I'm supposed to be telling him secrets." A chill ran through me. "What kind of questions exactly? Like if you're dating anyone, or if you seem sad when he's not around, or who visits us at Aunt Vanessa's?" She looked up, concern in her eyes. Am I not supposed to answer? I chose my words carefully, not wanting to place Lily in the middle of adult conflicts, but needing to establish appropriate boundaries. You can always answer questions that make you comfortable. But if Daddy asks things that make you feel weird, or like you're keeping secrets, you can tell him you'd rather talk about something else. And you can always tell me or the visitation supervisor if anything makes you uncomfortable. Lily nodded, relief evident in her posture. Okay, I just don't want to make anyone mad. Oh, sweetie. I pulled her into a hug, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo. None of this is your responsibility. You don't have to manage adults' feelings or keep anyone happy. That's our job, not yours. That night, I emailed Patricia about Lily's revelation. By morning, she had filed a motion to address Daniel's inappropriate questioning during visitations. The court appointed a guardian ad litem, an attorney specifically representing Lily's interests, who would observe future visitations and interview Lily about her comfort level with both parents. Daniel was furious, calling me directly despite Patricia's instructions that all communication should go through attorneys. You're poisoning her against me, making her think my questions are inappropriate when I'm just trying to stay connected to my daughter's life. I remained calm, refusing to be baited into an argument. The guardian ad litem is an objective third party who will determine what's appropriate. If you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to worry about. This is just another way to control me, to make me look bad in court. His voice cracked with desperation. First you take my home, then my money. Now you're trying to limit my relationship with my own child. Daniel, listen carefully. I didn't take anything from you. The court determined equitable division of assets we built together, with protection for my inheritance contribution. As for Lily, I've never prevented visitation, even when you were painting me as unstable in radio interviews. All I'm doing is ensuring her emotional well-being is protected. If you can't see the difference, that's exactly why these safeguards are necessary. After hanging up, I sat at Vanessa's kitchen table, hands shaking slightly. Each confrontation with Daniel left me emotionally drained, reopening wounds that had just begun to heal. The divorce process wasn't just about legal separation. It was about disentangling 7 years of emotional investment, of dreams and plans woven together so tightly that pulling them apart inevitably caused pain. The guardian ad litem, a compassionate but no-nonsense woman named Eleanor, conducted her investigation over the next 2 weeks. She observed Daniel's visitations, interviewed Lily privately, and reviewed the case history. Her report to the court was measured but clear. Daniel had been using visitation to gather information about me, rather than focusing on quality time with his daughter, creating an uncomfortable dynamic for Lily. Judge Harmon implemented new guidelines. Daniel's visitations would continue, but with clear boundaries about appropriate conversation topics. Questions about my personal life, finances, or relationships were explicitly prohibited. The supervision requirement would remain in place for an additional 90 days, after which the court would reassess based on Daniel's compliance with the new guidelines. It was a balanced ruling, protecting Lily while still allowing Daniel to maintain his relationship with her. I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Not victory, but vindication. The court had recognized the subtle manipulation tactics Daniel employed, the ways he attempted to use our daughter as an information pipeline. As May turned to June, we closed on the Birmingham house and began the process of making it our own. Lily chose new paint colors for her bedroom, a soft lavender that made her feel peaceful, and helped select furniture for the living areas. I created a home office in the smallest bedroom, setting up my computer and marketing materials in a space that was entirely mine, free from memories or associations with my former life. The divorce proceedings continued their methodical pace, each hearing bringing us closer to finality. Daniel's initial combativeness had given way to resignation as the reality of his situation became impossible to ignore. His attorney now focused on damage control rather than aggressive tactics, seeking to preserve what assets remained rather than fighting battles already lost. Through it all, I maintained the quiet dignity my mother had modeled throughout her life. I never raised my voice in court, never sent angry texts or emails, never spoke ill of Daniel in front of Lily. The control he once exercised over our family had been replaced by something stronger, not dominance, but self-possession. The woman who had stood frozen on that rooftop, champagne glass shattered at her feet, had transformed into someone who could navigate loss without being consumed by it. One evening, as Lily and I ate dinner on the patio of our new home, she looked up from her plate with unexpected seriousness. "Mom, are you happy now?" The question stopped me mid-bite. "Why do you ask?" "Because you seem different. Like you're really here, not just thinking about other stuff all the time." Her perception astounded me. "And you laugh more." I considered her observation, recognizing its truth. "I am happier, Lily. Not because Daddy and I are apart, but because I'm living more honestly now. Sometimes relationships break, and that's sad. But pretending they're not broken can be even sadder." She nodded, processing this with the remarkable wisdom of children. "I think I'm happier too. It was scary at first, but now it feels better. Like when you have a loose tooth that hurts, and you're afraid to pull it out, but once it's gone, the hurt stops." Out of the mouths of babes comes clarity adults struggle years to achieve. I reached across the table, squeezing her hand. "That's exactly right. And just like a loose tooth, something stronger will grow in its place." That night, I sat on my new porch swing, watching fireflies illuminate the summer darkness. A text arrived from Rachel. "Just saw Daniel at Somerset Mall, alone, looking rough. He asked about you." I didn't respond immediately, letting the information settle. There had been a time when Daniel's suffering would have activated my caretaking instincts, when I would have rushed to smooth his path, to absorb his pain as my responsibility. That time had passed. His journey was his own now, separate from mine. I finally replied, "What did you tell him?" Rachel's response came quickly. "That you're flourishing, that Lily's thriving, that sometimes the best thing a man can do for a woman is to get out of her way." I smiled into the darkness, the fireflies blinking like distant stars. "Perfect," I texted back, then set my phone aside. The night air carried the scent of blooming jasmine from the neighbor's yard, a fragrance I once associated with betrayal now reclaimed as simply part of a summer evening. Inside, Lily slept peacefully in her lavender room, secure in the knowledge that whatever changed around her, she remained deeply loved. This wasn't the life I had planned 7 years ago when I walked down the aisle toward Daniel. It was something entirely different, harder in some ways, infinitely more authentic in others. The path forward wasn't perfectly clear, but for the first time in years, it was truly mine to choose. The architect of my future would no longer be the man who had betrayed me, but the woman who had emerged from that betrayal, stronger, wiser, and finally, gloriously visible. Autumn in Detroit brought a decisive shift to the divorce proceedings. What had begun as a bitter, contested battle gradually transformed into a negotiated settlement as Daniel's options dwindled. The final hearing was scheduled for November 15th, almost exactly 5 months after the rooftop revelation that had shattered my marriage and recalibrated my life. The Birmingham house had become truly ours over the summer months. Lily's lavender bedroom walls now displayed her growing collection of art projects, while the backyard maple trees created a canopy of red and gold leaves that she delighted in jumping into after school. My home office, once an austere testament to new beginnings, now felt lived in and productive as my freelance marketing business steadily expanded. Patricia called on a crisp Monday morning, her tone businesslike, but with an undertone of satisfaction. "Morgan, Daniel's attorney reached out over the weekend. They want to settle before the final hearing. No more delays, no more motions, just a clean end to this chapter." I sat at my kitchen island, watching golden leaves spiral down outside the window. What changed? Last I heard, he was still fighting the custody arrangement. Reality finally sank in. His financial situation has deteriorated significantly. The legal fees are mounting, and Judge Harmon's pattern of rulings makes the final outcome fairly predictable. His attorney has likely advised him to cut his losses. A familiar mix of emotions swirled through me. relief tinged with an unexpected sadness for the man who had once been the center of my world, now reduced to strategic surrender. What are they offering? Full acceptance of our last proposal. Primary physical custody remains with you, with Daniel having every other weekend plus one dinner visit weekly, unsupervised after the current probationary period ends. Financial terms as outlined in our last filing, including your maintenance of the Birmingham property as separate from marital assets. Child support at the guideline amount based on Daniel's previous income, to be reviewed if his employment situation changes. I took a deep breath, processing the finality of it all. And if we agree, this ends next week? No trial, no more hearings? Exactly. You'd both appear before Judge Harmon to confirm the agreement, she'd incorporate it into the final decree, and you'd leave the courthouse divorced. Clean, simple, done. The word divorced hung in the air, heavier than I'd expected. Despite months of legal maneuvering, something about this final step felt momentous. The legal severing of a bond I'd once believed unbreakable. Let's do it, I said finally. Let's end this. Patricia's voice softened slightly. Morgan, you've handled this entire process with remarkable grace. Many clients in your position would have demanded blood. You've remained focused on what matters, your daughter's well-being and your financial security. That's commendable. Her words warmed something inside me, not pride exactly, but recognition that the path I'd chosen had been the right one, despite its difficulties. Thank you, Patricia, for everything. After hanging up, I stood in my kitchen, absorbing the stillness of the moment. In just over a week, I would legally become a single woman again. The realization brought neither jubilation nor sorrow, but a quiet acknowledgement that life continues to evolve, sometimes in directions we never anticipated. That evening, as Lily and I prepared dinner together, a simple pasta dish she'd learned to help with, I decided to share the news. Lily, I wanted to let you know that the divorce will be final next week. Daddy and I have agreed on all the details. She paused in her careful stirring of the sauce. Does that mean the visits at the special place will stop? Yes. After a little while longer, you'll visit Daddy at his apartment every other weekend, and he'll take you to dinner once a week. Lily considered this, her expression thoughtful. Will you and Daddy stop fighting then? The innocent question pierced my heart. Despite our efforts to shield her, Lily had absorbed the tension, the legal maneuvers, the strained exchanges. We weren't really fighting, sweetie. We were working through complicated grown-up decisions. But yes, things should be much calmer now. She nodded, returning to her stirring with renewed concentration. Good. I don't like it when you're sad, even when you try to hide it. Children see everything, not just actions, but the emotions we think we've successfully concealed. I kissed the top of her head, breathing in the faint scent of school playground and strawberry shampoo. I'm not sad anymore, Lily. I promise. And surprisingly, it was true. The acute pain of betrayal had faded, replaced by a steady forward momentum. The woman who had stood frozen on that rooftop, champagne glass shattered at her feet, now moved through her days with purpose and clarity, not despite the betrayal, but because of how she'd risen above it. The day of the final hearing arrived with a crystalline November sky, the air sharp with approaching winter. I dressed carefully in a charcoal suit that projected both confidence and dignity, applying minimal makeup that emphasized my eyes that had seen clearly since that night on the rooftop, when scales of willful blindness had fallen away forever. The courthouse felt different this time, less intimidating, more like a way station on a journey nearly complete. Patricia met me in the lobby, immaculate as always in a navy suit that radiated authority. Ready? I nodded, smoothing non-existent wrinkles from my jacket. More than ready. We ascended to Judge Harmon's courtroom, the elevator carrying us toward resolution. Inside, Daniel already sat beside his attorney, shoulders slightly hunched in a suit that appeared newer than his recent financial situation would suggest. When he turned at our entrance, I noticed he'd lost weight, his face more angular than I remembered. Our eyes met briefly across the room, his uncertain, mine steady. No words passed between us, but an acknowledgement hung in the air. This ending had been inevitable from the moment those text messages appeared on his phone screen. Judge Harmon entered promptly at 10 o'clock a.m., her efficient movements suggesting a busy docket. Reynolds' divorce settlement hearing, she announced, reviewing the documents before her. I understand the parties have reached a full agreement? Both attorneys confirmed this, presenting the signed settlement for the judge's review. She read through it carefully, occasionally glancing up to study each of us. The court finds this agreement equitable and in the best interest of the minor child. Before entering it as final, I need verbal confirmation from both parties that you understand and voluntarily accept these terms. Daniel spoke first, his voice slightly hoarse. Yes, Your Honor. I understand and accept. When my turn came, I spoke clearly, my voice carrying through the hushed courtroom. I understand and voluntarily accept the terms, Your Honor. Judge Harmon nodded, signing the decree with a flourish that officially ended 7 years of marriage. This court grants the dissolution of marriage between Daniel Reynolds and Morgan Reynolds, with all terms as outlined in the settlement agreement. Ms. Reynolds, you are granted the right to resume your maiden name if you wish. Is that your intention? I hadn't considered this aspect, having been so focused on the larger issues of custody and finances. My maiden name, Morgan Elliott, belonged to a younger woman, one who hadn't yet experienced marriage, motherhood, betrayal, or reclamation. But that name also connected me to my mother, to the inheritance she'd left that had ultimately provided me security when my marriage collapsed. Yes, Your Honor, I'd like to resume my maiden name. She made a notation on the decree. So ordered. This marriage is dissolved. The court wishes both parties well as you move forward separately. With that simple pronouncement, it was done. 7 years of shared life, legally severed in less than 15 minutes. Patricia squeezed my arm gently as we gathered our belongings. Congratulations, Morgan Elliott. How does it feel? I considered the question, taking inventory of my emotions. Like closing a book I've read too many times, familiar but finished. As we exited the courtroom, Daniel approached, his attorney hovering protectively nearby. Morgan, can we talk for a moment? Alone? Patricia raised an eyebrow, silently asking if I wanted her to intervene. I shook my head slightly. It's fine. I'll meet you downstairs. At once Patricia and Daniel's attorney had moved down the hallway, giving us privacy. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. So that's it. We're divorced. That's generally what marriage dissolved means, yes. The words came out sharper than intended, an edge I thought had dulled over the months. He flinched slightly. I deserved that. I deserve worse, actually. His gaze dropped to the floor, then back to my face with visible effort. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. Not just for the affair, but for everything after. Fighting you in court, trying to control the narrative, using Lily to gather information. It was all beneath me, beneath what I should have been. The apology surprised me with its apparent sincerity. For months, Daniel had oscillated between aggression and self-pity, never fully acknowledging the deliberate nature of his betrayal. Why now, after all this time? He exhaled slowly. I've been seeing a therapist. Court mandated at first, for the visitation issues, but I've continued voluntarily. She's helped me see patterns I've been repeating my whole life, seeking external validation, prioritizing appearance over substance, using people to bolster my self-image. A humorless laugh escaped him. Turns out I'm a textbook narcissist. Who knew? Everyone who really knew you, I replied, the words matter-of-fact rather than cruel. Daniel nodded, accepting the assessment. I'm trying to change. For Lily, mostly. I don't want her to grow up with a father who measures worth by appearances. I don't want to pass this legacy down to her. For the first time since the rooftop, I saw a glimmer of the man I'd once loved. Not the charming facade, but the occasional authentic moments when his guard dropped. That's commendable, Daniel. Lily deserves a father who sees her true value. She deserves better than what I've been. He hesitated, then added, You did too. You always did. We stood in silence for a moment, the weight of 7 shared years hanging between us. Finally, I spoke. I should go. Patricia's waiting. Of course. Daniel stepped back, creating physical distance that mirrored our new legal reality. I'll pick Lily up Friday at 6:00 as agreed? She'll be ready. I turned to leave, then paused. Daniel, I hope you find what you're looking for. I really do. His eyes, so like Lily's, held a complexity of emotions I couldn't fully decipher. I lost what I was looking for when I betrayed you, but thank you. I walked away, my heels clicking rhythmically against the marble floor, carrying me toward a future entirely my own. Outside the courthouse, standing on the same steps where Daniel had once begged for another chance, Patricia handed me the final signed decree. Keep this somewhere safe. It's your freedom papers. I slipped the document into my purse, its weight both literal and symbolic. What now? Patricia smiled, her professional demeanor softening slightly. Now you live, Morgan Elliott. Just live. The Birmingham house welcomed me home that afternoon, sunlight streaming through windows I'd selected, warming spaces I'd created. I moved through the room slowly, touching furniture I'd chosen, books I'd arranged, photographs I'd framed. This home reflected only my aesthetic, my preferences, my history, a visual representation of my reclaimed autonomy. In the kitchen, I poured a glass of wine, toasting my reflection in the window. To Morgan Elliott, I whispered. Nice to meet you again. That evening, when I picked Lily up from school, I shared the news that the divorce was final. She absorbed this information with the resilience children often display, asking practical questions about weekend schedules and holiday arrangements. Her main concern seemed to be whether Christmas would be divided, a worry I assuaged by explaining the detailed holiday schedule Patricia had incorporated into our agreement. So I'll be with you on Christmas morning, then with Daddy for dinner, she confirmed, counting days on her fingers. That's right. And next year, you'll be with Daddy in the morning and me for dinner. We'll alternate each year. She nodded, processing this new reality. That's okay, I guess, like having two Christmases. Children adapt. They find silver linings in situations adults view as tragic. Lily's ability to see potential positives in our fractured family reminded me that endings often contain beginnings, if we're willing to recognize them. As November progressed, our new routine solidified. Daniel arrived promptly at 6:00 p.m. each Friday for his weekend visitation, waiting in the driveway rather than coming to the door, a boundary we'd established to minimize awkward interactions. Lily would rush out with her overnight bag, excited for daddy-daughter time that, according to her reports, now included museums, parks, and board game marathons rather than the electronic distractions that had characterized Daniel's early parenting efforts. I used these child-free weekends to rebuild my social life, reconnecting with friends who had drifted during my marriage and making new connections through local business networking events. My freelance marketing business had grown steadily, allowing me to be selective about clients and projects. The financial security provided by my inheritance and divorce settlement meant I could prioritize work that interested me rather than accepting anything that paid. One Friday evening in early December, while Lily was with Daniel, Rachel convinced me to attend a holiday mixer hosted by a local business association. You need to put yourself out there, she insisted over the phone, and I don't just mean professionally. I glanced at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, assessing the woman who stared back. At 42, I remained physically fit, my dark hair now cut in a sleek bob that framed features time had matured rather than diminished. I'm not sure I'm ready to date, Rachel. Who said anything about dating? Just come to the mixer. Talk to grown-ups who aren't divorce attorneys or elementary school teachers. Drink wine that doesn't come from your own refrigerator. Live a little. The prospect was simultaneously appealing and terrifying. During my marriage, social events had always been extensions of Daniel's professional life, opportunities for him to network while I played the supportive spouse. The idea of attending a function as myself, for myself, required a mental adjustment. Fine, I relented, but I'm leaving by 9. The mixer occupied the top floor of a renovated industrial building in Birmingham's small but vibrant downtown. Twinkling lights and evergreen garlands transformed the exposed brick space into a festive environment, while a jazz quartet played holiday standards in the corner. I arrived fashionably late, wearing a simple black dress that conveyed confidence without seeking attention. Rachel met me at the entrance, champagne flute already in hand. "You came, and you look gorgeous." Her eyes narrowed suspiciously. "But that dress screams, 'I'm here for networking only,' not 'I'm open to meeting someone interesting.'" I accepted the champagne she thrust toward me. "Because I am here for networking only. My business is growing and connections matter." Uh-huh. Rachel's skeptical expression made it clear she saw through my professional pretense. "Just promise me you'll talk to at least 3 people you don't already know, and at least one of them should be male, attractive, and not wearing a wedding ring." I laughed despite myself. "I'm making no such promise, but I will circulate and be sociable. Happy?" "It's a start." She linked her arm through mine, guiding me deeper into the crowded room. "Let's begin with James Chen over by the windows. He owns that new architectural firm that's renovating the old theater building. Divorced 2 years, no kids, excellent taste in wine, and—" She lowered her voice conspiratorially. "He's been asking about you since I mentioned you'd be here." Before I could protest, Rachel had steered me toward a tall, distinguished-looking man in his late 40s, whose warm smile and easy manner immediately put me at ease. Conversation flowed naturally as we discovered shared interests in mid-century architecture, independent films, and the ongoing restoration projects throughout Detroit's historic neighborhoods. "I've been working on the Fox Theater's facade restoration," James explained, his enthusiasm evident. "The craftsmanship in those original details. It's extraordinary what they accomplished without modern technology." "I've always loved that building," I replied, genuinely engaged. "My mother used to take me to shows there when I was Lily's age. I remember looking up at the ceiling, convinced I was inside a magical palace." James smiled, the expression reaching his eyes. "That's exactly what the original architects intended. Transportation to another world. When we strip away decades of paint and repairs, we find their vision intact underneath, just waiting to be revealed again." Something about his words resonated beyond architecture, touching on my own experience of rediscovering myself beneath layers of marriage and motherhood. There's something profound about that, finding the original design under everything that's been added later. "Restoration is as much about removal as reconstruction," he agreed. "Sometimes more so." Our conversation continued through 2 glasses of champagne and a shared plate of appetizers. When James eventually asked for my business card to discuss a potential collaboration on marketing for the theater restoration, I found myself adding my personal cell number beneath my professional contact information. As promised, I left at 9, but not before agreeing to meet James for coffee the following week, strictly to discuss the theater project, he'd said with a smile that suggested potential for more. Driving home through Birmingham's holiday-decorated streets, I felt a lightness I hadn't experienced in months. Not because of James specifically, though his company had been enjoyable, but because I'd remembered how to be Morgan Elliott, not just Lily's mother, not Daniel's ex-wife, but a woman with interests, opinions, and an identity entirely her own. December brought the first significant challenge to our new co-parenting arrangement. Daniel called on a Tuesday evening, his voice tense with restrained excitement. "Morgan, I've been offered a position with a firm in Chicago. It's a fresh start, a chance to rebuild my career away from the reputation damage here in Detroit." The news landed like a stone in still water, ripples of implications spreading outward. "Chicago? That's a 4-hour drive, Daniel. What about your visitation with Lily?" "That's why I'm calling. I want to discuss modifications to the arrangement. I'd still take her every other weekend, but I'd need to pick her up directly from school on Friday and return her Sunday evening, and maybe we could adjust the holiday schedule to give me longer stretches when she's out of school." I sat at my kitchen island, processing the request. Part of me, the part still smarting from betrayal, wanted to refuse outright, to remind him that stability for Lily had been a central argument in our custody negotiations. Another part recognized that his career rehabilitation ultimately benefited Lily through financial support and a healthier relationship with her father. "When would this start?" I asked, buying time to consider. "January 15th. I know it's soon, but this opportunity came unexpectedly. The position opened when someone left suddenly, and they need to fill it quickly. I'll need to talk to Patricia about modifying the decree. And more importantly, we need to discuss this with Lily. This changes her time with you significantly. Daniel's voice softened. I know. I've been thinking about how to explain it to her. I don't want her to feel like I'm abandoning her. The concern seemed genuine, a marked contrast to the self-centered perspective he'd maintained throughout most of our divorce proceedings. Let me talk to Patricia first. Then we'll set up a time to tell Lily together. She should hear this from both of us, with a clear plan already in place. After hanging up, I immediately called Patricia, explaining Daniel's opportunity and proposed arrangement changes. Is this something we should fight? I asked, still uncertain of the best approach. Patricia considered the question. Legally, you could object based on the disruption to Lily's routine. However, courts generally support reasonable accommodations for parents' employment situations, especially when the parent is making good faith efforts to maintain the relationship despite distance. So you think I should agree? I think you should negotiate terms that prioritize Lily's well-being while acknowledging the reality of Daniel's relocation. Perhaps request additional summer vacation time with him to offset the quality of weekend visits being impacted by travel. And definitely insist on him covering all transportation costs related to visitation. With Patricia's guidance, I developed a counter-proposal that protected Lily's interests while accommodating Daniel's career move. When we met to discuss the changes, sitting awkwardly at a coffee shop midway between our homes, Daniel surprised me by accepting all my terms without argument. This is more than fair, he acknowledged, reviewing the document. I appreciate your flexibility, Morgan. This isn't about us anymore. It's about Lily having a meaningful relationship with both parents regardless of geography. He nodded, a certain humility in his expression that still felt new and slightly disconcerting. I'm trying to be a better father than I was a husband. That's a worthy goal. I gathered my coat, preparing to leave. We should tell Lily this weekend, when you have her for visitation. I can come by Sunday afternoon before you bring her home. Actually, Daniel hesitated. I thought maybe we could tell her together at your house before I take her for the weekend. That way, she has time with both of us to process the news, then can ask each of us questions privately. The suggestion showed surprising insight into Lily's potential emotional needs, another indication that perhaps Daniel's therapy was yielding genuine growth. That's thoughtful. Friday at 5:30 then? You can come inside this time. When Friday arrived, Lily's excitement at seeing both parents in her home quickly transformed to confusion as we sat her down in the living room. Daniel explained his upcoming move with care, emphasizing that while the location of his home would change, his love for her remained constant. But why do you have to move? Lily's small face crumpled slightly. Why can't you get a job here? Daniel knelt before her, maintaining eye contact. Sometimes, sweetie, adults make mistakes that have big consequences. I made choices that damaged my reputation here in Detroit. In Chicago, I can start fresh, be a better person, and still be your dad, just from a different city. His honesty impressed me. No sugarcoating, no evasion, just age-appropriate truth. Lily considered this, her expression serious. Will I still see you every other weekend? Absolutely. We've worked everything out. I'll pick you up from school on Friday, we'll drive to Chicago together, and you'll see my new apartment and explore a new city. Then Sunday evening, I'll bring you back home to Mom. We answered her questions together, presenting a united front despite our separate lives. When she asked about holidays, summer vacations, and her birthday, we explained the revised schedule, emphasizing the additional summer weeks she'd spend in Chicago once school ended. Eventually, Lily's concerns gave way to cautious excitement about exploring a new city. Can we visit the Big Bean sculpture? My friend Madison went there and said you can see your reflection all weird. Daniel smiled, relief evident in his posture. Cloudgate, that's what it's actually called. And yes, it's at the top of our Chicago adventure list. After Lily went upstairs to pack her overnight bag, Daniel turned to me. Thank you for handling this so reasonably. I half expected you to fight me on the move. 6 months ago, I might have. I straightened a pillow on the couch, a habitual gesture when uncomfortable. But that wouldn't serve anyone, least of all Lily. She needs both of us to be our best selves, even if that means some logistical challenges. He studied me for a moment. You've changed. We both have. I met his gaze directly. Necessity has a way of doing that. Daniel nodded, accepting the assessment. For what it's worth, I like who you've become. Not that my opinion matters anymore. It doesn't, I confirmed, the words firm but not unkind. But I appreciate the sentiment. When Lily returned with her bag, Daniel headed toward the door. I'll have her back Sunday at 7 o'clock. And Morgan? Thank you again. After they left, I moved through the suddenly quiet house, adjusting to this latest evolution in our post-divorce reality. Daniel's relocation represented another severance of our shared past. One more tie cut, one more joint history relegated to memory. Yet, surprisingly, I felt no sadness at this further separation. Instead, a certain peace settled over me, the recognition that emotional distance had already been established long before geographical distance entered the equation. The woman who had once organized her life around Daniel's needs now organized her life around her own, with Lily as the beloved constant. January arrived with bitter cold and the concrete reality of Daniel's move. He'd found an apartment in Chicago's Lincoln Park neighborhood, close to both his new office and amenities Lily would enjoy during visits. The first weekend pickup proceeded smoothly, with Daniel arriving at Lily's school as arranged and texting me when they safely reached Chicago 4 hours later. With Lily gone and a weekend to myself, I finally accepted James Chen's repeated invitations to dinner. We met at a small Italian restaurant in Birmingham, its intimate atmosphere encouraging conversation that ranged from professional to personal with surprising ease. How's the theater restoration coming along? I asked as we settled at a corner table. On schedule, surprisingly. We uncovered some original murals behind drywall that had been added in the 1970s, exquisite work that everyone thought was lost. James's passion for his work animated his features. We're bringing in conservation specialists from the DIA to help restore them. That must be incredibly satisfying, revealing beauty that's been hidden for decades. He smiled, reaching for his wine glass. It's what I love most about restoration work. Not just maintaining what exists, but discovering what's been forgotten or covered up. He studied me for a moment. I sense you understand that process personally. The observation, gentle but perceptive, caught me slightly off guard. I suppose I do. This past year has been illuminating in that way. Rachel mentioned your divorce was recently finalized. I hope it's not overstepping to say I admire how you've navigated it, at least from what little I've observed. I appreciated his directness, the absence of either pity or judgment. Thank you. It's been a process of rediscovering myself beneath layers I didn't even realize had accumulated. Like those murals, James offered, existing all along, just waiting to be uncovered. The evening progressed with comfortable conversation, shared laughter, and subtle signs of mutual interest. When James walked me to my car after dinner, the question of a second date hung in the air between us. I've enjoyed this evening, he said simply, his breath visible in the January cold. So have I. I found myself smiling naturally, without the calculated social expression I'd perfected during years of Daniel's business functions. Lily returns from Chicago tomorrow evening, right? At my nod, he continued. Perhaps next weekend, when she's with her father again. We could try that new restaurant in Detroit, the one in the renovated fire station. The invitation, clear, respectful of my parenting schedule with no pressure, felt refreshingly straightforward after years of navigating Daniel's complex social choreography. I'd like that. As I drove home through Birmingham's quiet streets, I reflected on the differences between this budding connection and my early relationship with Daniel. Where he had dazzled with grand gestures and performative charm, James offered authenticity and genuine interest. Where Daniel had subtly demanded attention, James gave it freely. Whether this potential relationship developed further or remained a pleasant dinner companion, the contrast illuminated how much I'd grown, not just in what I sought in others, but in what I expected for myself. February brought another unexpected development. While dropping Lily at school one morning, I encountered Daniel in the parking lot, helping our daughter with her science project. a model of the solar system too unwieldy for her to manage alone. Daniel, what are you doing here? I thought you went back to Chicago Sunday night. He secured Neptune in its orbit before answering. I did. Flew back this morning for Lily's presentation. Couldn't miss her first big project. Lily beamed between us, pride evident in her posture. Dad helped me get the distances right. We used actual mathematical scales. I studied Daniel with new eyes, noting the subtle changes 6 weeks in Chicago had wrought. He appeared healthier, more grounded, the desperate edge that had characterized him during our divorce proceedings, replaced by a quieter confidence. That's really thoughtful of you to come back for this, he shrugged, the gesture modest rather than dismissive. It's important to her, so it's important to me. Simple as that. After helping Lily deliver her project safely to her classroom, we walked back to the parking lot together. An awkward silence settled between us until Daniel cleared his throat. How are you, Morgan? Really? The question, asked without ulterior motive, deserved an honest answer. I'm good. My business is growing, Lily's thriving, and the Birmingham house finally feels completely like home. He nodded, absorbing this information. I'm glad. You deserve that stability. And you? How's Chicago treating you? Better than I expected. The firm is a good fit, and the distance from Detroit has been clarifying. No one there knows about the scandal, the divorce drama, any of it. I'm just Daniel Reynolds, new hire with relevant experience. Fresh start, I observed, remembering his words to Lily. Exactly. Though I miss Lily terribly, video calls aren't the same. The admission carried no manipulation, no attempt to elicit sympathy or renegotiate terms, just honest parental longing. The summer will be here before you know it. 6 weeks together will be meaningful. I'm already planning activities for her visit. Museum memberships, architectural river tours, baseball games, things she'll remember. As we reached our respective cars, an unexpected thought occurred to me. You know, if you want to stay for Lily's parent-teacher conference tomorrow afternoon, you could. It's at 4:30. Surprise registered on his face. Are you sure? I know the decree gives you authority for educational decisions. Co-parenting means being flexible when it serves Lily's interests. You flying in for her project shows commitment. She'd love having both parents at her conference. Daniel's expression softened with genuine gratitude. Thank you, Morgan. I'll adjust my return flight. As I watched him drive away, I realized something profound had shifted between us. The white-hot rage of betrayal had cooled. The bitter resentment of divorce proceedings had faded, leaving space for something unexpected. Not friendship exactly, but a tentative respect based on our shared love for Lily, rather than our failed marriage. The following afternoon, sitting beside Daniel in Lily's classroom as her teacher praised her academic progress and social skills, I felt an unfamiliar peace. We weren't a family anymore, at least not in the traditional sense, but we were still connected through our daughter, still able to share pride in her achievements and concern for her challenges. After the conference, walking to the parking lot with comfortable distance between us, Daniel spoke hesitantly. I don't know if this crosses a line, but I heard from Rachel that you've been seeing someone. An architect? The question surprised me, though his source did not. Rachel had never mastered discretion. James Chen, we've had a few dinners. It's very casual. I studied him, curious about his motivation. Why do you ask? Daniel shrugged, hands in pockets. Just wanted to say I'm happy for you. You deserve someone who sees your value from the start, not after losing you. The acknowledgement, offered without expectation of response, touched something tender within me. Thank you. That's generous. Not generous, just truthful. He paused by his rental car. Anyway, I should get to the airport. Thanks again for including me today. As he drove away, I stood for a moment in the school parking lot, absorbing the realization that this was what healing looked like. Not the absence of pain, but its transformation into something bearable, even instructive. Spring arrived gradually in Michigan, temperatures rising incrementally as dormant plants reawakened. In my backyard, crocuses pushed through soil still partially frozen, their purple blooms defiant against winter's lingering chill. Lily, now approaching her 10th birthday, had adjusted remarkably well to our new family configuration, navigating weekend visits to Chicago with increasing independence. My relationship with James had developed naturally, without pressure or pretense. We saw each other regularly during Lily's Chicago weekends, enjoying the cultural offerings of Detroit and Birmingham, while building a connection based on mutual respect and genuine compatibility. He'd met Lily briefly during an impromptu ice cream outing, the introduction casual enough to avoid placing undue significance on his presence in my life. Daniel had settled into his Chicago position, his professional rehabilitation progressing steadily. Our communications remained focused on Lily, but had evolved from tense negotiations to straightforward co-parenting discussions. When he mentioned dating someone, a colleague at his firm, I found myself genuinely hoping it might provide him the stability he'd been unable to maintain in our marriage. As Mother's Day approached, Lily grew secretive, clearly planning something special. She'd disappear into her room with art supplies, emerging with suspiciously paint-stained fingers and a satisfied expression. The morning of the holiday, she bounded into my bedroom carrying a tray with slightly burnt toast, orange juice, and a wrapped package. "Happy Mother's Day!" Her excitement was contagious, her smile revealing a recently lost tooth. I sat up in bed, making appropriate expressions of surprise and delight at the breakfast offering. "This looks wonderful, Lily. Did you make it all yourself?" "Dad helped with the toast when he dropped me off. He's waiting downstairs." She bounced slightly on the edge of the bed. "Open your present." The mention of Daniel waiting downstairs momentarily distracted me from the gift in my hands. "Your dad is here? Now?" Lily nodded enthusiastically. "He drove me back early so we could surprise you with breakfast. He said mothers should get special treatment today, even if they're not married to the fathers anymore." The sentiment, clearly Daniel's words relayed through Lily, caught me off guard with its thoughtfulness. I turned my attention to the carefully wrapped package, removing the newspaper comics Lily had used as wrapping paper to reveal a handmade book titled "Why My Mom is Amazing." Each construction paper page featured an illustration and caption. "My mom makes the best chocolate chip pancakes," accompanied a drawing of me at the stove. "My mom helps me with homework even when it's hard," showed us at the kitchen table surrounded by books. "My mom teaches me to be brave," depicted a smaller figure standing tall beside a larger one. The final page featured a family portrait of sorts, Lily in the center, me on one side, Daniel on the other, all holding hands despite being clearly separated by space. The caption read, "My mom taught me that families can change shape but still be full of love." Tears pricked at my eyes as I hugged Lily close. "This is the most beautiful gift I've ever received. Thank you, sweetheart." Dad helped me with the binding. "We worked on it during my Chicago weekends." She pointed to the yarn holding the pages together. "He said you deserve something special because you're the best mom ever." Once again, Daniel's unexpected thoughtfulness caught me by surprise. "That was very kind of him. Can we go have breakfast with him now? He brought fancy coffee for you from that place you like." I dressed quickly, pulling a brush through my hair and splashing water on my face before joining them in the kitchen. Daniel stood somewhat awkwardly by the counter, 2 coffee cups from my favorite local roaster beside him. "Happy Mother's Day," he offered, extending 1 cup toward me. "Almond milk latte, extra shot, no sweetener. If your order hasn't changed." "It hasn't, thank you." I accepted the coffee, the familiar aroma comforting. "And thank you for helping with Lily's gift. It's lovely." "She did all the hard work. I just provided art supplies and binding assistance." He glanced at his watch. "I should probably get going. I know this is your day with her." Lily looked between us, disappointment evident. "But I thought we could all have breakfast together. Just this once?" Daniel and I exchanged glances, silently negotiating this unexpected territory. After a moment, I nodded slightly. "I think we can manage that. Just this once for Mother's Day." The 3 of us sat at my kitchen table, an arrangement that should have felt strange, but somehow didn't. Lily dominated the conversation, detailing her Chicago adventures and school projects with equal enthusiasm. Daniel and I contributed appropriately, maintaining pleasant interaction without forcing false camaraderie. When breakfast concluded, Daniel thanked me for including him, his gratitude genuine. This meant a lot to Lily, and to me, honestly. It was nice, I admitted, surprising myself with the truth of it. Different, but nice. After he left, Lily and I spent the day together as planned, visiting the botanical gardens and enjoying a special mother-daughter lunch. That evening, as I tucked her into bed, she asked the question that had clearly been on her mind all day. Mom, do you think you and Dad might ever get back together? Like Madison's parents did after they were divorced for a while? The innocent hope in her voice tugged at my heart, but demanded complete honesty. No, sweetie. Dad and I care about you more than anything, and we're learning to work together as your parents, but we won't be getting back together as a couple. Because of what he did? Her perception sometimes startled me. Partly, but mostly because we've both changed and grown in different directions. Sometimes people fit together for a while, then they don't anymore. That doesn't mean the time together wasn't important. Lily considered this, her expression thoughtful beyond her years. Like puzzle pieces that used to connect but got reshaped? That's actually a perfect way to think about it. I smoothed her hair back from her forehead. Very insightful, Lily. Is that why you like Mr. James now? Because his puzzle piece fits yours better? The question caught me off guard. Mr. James and I are friends who enjoy spending time together. It's very different from marriage. But you smile when you talk about him, and you laugh at his jokes even when they're not that funny. Her observation was uncomfortably accurate. It's okay, Mom. I want you to be happy. I kissed her forehead, momentarily speechless at her emotional maturity. Thank you, sweetheart. That means everything to me. As summer approached, bringing the end of the school year and Lily's extended visit to Chicago, I found myself reflecting on the journey of the past year. The woman who had stood frozen on that rooftop, champagne glass shattered at her feet, now moved through life with purpose and clarity, raising her daughter, building her business, exploring a promising new relationship, and even co-parenting civilly with the man who had once betrayed her so completely. The journey hadn't been easy. The pain hadn't magically disappeared. But like those crocuses pushing through frozen soil in my backyard, something new had emerged from what once seemed barren, not despite the harsh conditions, but because of the strength required to overcome them. One evening in late May, as Lily and I planted a vegetable garden in our backyard, she asked a question that crystallized everything. Mom, are you happier now than before, when we lived with Dad? I paused, trowel in hand, considering the complexity of the question. It's not quite that simple, Lily. I was happy in many ways during those years, especially because of you. But I wasn't being true to myself in other ways. What does that mean, not being true to yourself? I searched for words a 9-year-old might understand. It means I spent a lot of time trying to be what I thought your dad needed, instead of figuring out who I really was. Now I'm living more honestly, even though some parts have been very difficult. Lily nodded, surprisingly comprehending. Like Grandma always said, always know where your seat is. And if they don't offer you one, make your own table. My mother's wisdom passed through generations, landing perfectly in this moment of growth. Exactly like that. We've made our own table, haven't we? Yep. Lily patted the soil around a tomato seedling. And it's a pretty good table, I think. The best table, I agreed, watching my daughter's hands work confidently in the earth. Hands that would someday build her own life, hopefully with the wisdom to recognize her worth from the start, to never settle for a seat at someone else's table when she could create her own. That night, after Lily was asleep, I sat on my porch swing watching fireflies illuminate the darkness. My phone buzzed with a text from James. Thinking about you. Dinner tomorrow? I smiled, typing back, looking forward to it. A moment later, another text arrived, this one from Daniel. Lily left her science project notebook here last weekend. Should I mail it or bring it when I pick her up for summer visit? I replied with practical information about the project deadline, our interaction now comfortable in its focused co-parenting purpose. As I set my phone aside, the contrast between these two men, one who had broken my heart and another who might someday earn my trust, highlighted the distance I'd traveled. The fireflies continued their silent dance across my yard, their brief, brilliant lights illuminating, then fading, each flash a moment of beauty in the darkness. Like those ephemeral creatures, the pain of betrayal had served its purpose, a signal, a warning, ultimately a guide toward something better. I hadn't just survived betrayal. I had transformed it into the foundation for a life more authentic than any I'd known before, a life built not on appearances or others' expectations, but on the quiet strength that comes from knowing your own worth and refusing to accept anything less. The architect of my future was no longer the man who had betrayed me, but the woman who had emerged from that betrayal, stronger, wiser, and finally gloriously visible to herself.